I entered my thesis focused on the inequality of power and of money in this country. Let's take a look. Back in the 1960s, CEOs of companies typically earned about 21 times that of the average worker. Today, it's nearly 400 times that of the average worker. When you then look at the companies in America that employ the most workers, the disparity between their wages and the owning class becomes so exorbitant that it's hardly legible. Early in my thesis, I made an interactive version of this data using pizza, where most people end up getting a tiny slice and Domino's shareholders get the rest. That tiny slice is unlivable. But my thesis is not about dwelling in the scale of disparity and harm in this country. It's about organizing for change. My name is Erica Fink, and my thesis, Collective Power Tools, explores how to increase capacity for worker-led organizing using design. When I say worker-led organizing, I'm talking about the formation of labor unions. Labor unions are defined as the organization of coworkers into a collective that is able to pressure the boss for change. Labor organizing is responsible for winning and maintaining most of the rights people have at work today, from breaks and meal periods to health care, paid time off, and beyond. Unfortunately, union membership in America has been declining since the 1980s because of policy, at nearly the same rate as inequality has risen. On the other hand, interest in unions is currently growing, with the majority of the public in support. But this gap remains, where organizing new unions is extremely challenging. As a designer, I've wanted to explore the pain points that everyday people experience in trying to form a union and to explore how to scale up the best solutions. So I set out to talk to subject matter experts across union leadership, movement technology, labor journalism, innovation, and nonprofits, and organizers in a range of industries, from meatpacking to tech to architecture. I attended labor organizing trainings with Labor Notes and EWOC, and supported labor actions in the city, like Starbucks picket line and for Sesame Workers Union. And I began to map out an organizer's journey to form a union and what their various drop-off reasonings may be along the way. This became my map for design. Today, I'm going to share projects across 3 elements within this process: the early mindset shift, one-on-one conversations, and consensus building as your collective grows. But let's start at the beginning, in a situation where you're treated unfairly at work. You may believe that this is a personal failing, that you're alone in this experience, and that things just are the way they are. Organizing, however, begins with a different mindset, a belief that things can be better with a union. This need for a mindset shift led me to design a mobile site, Good Grievance, a productive place to vent. Camila is a barista in Brooklyn. Her boss has been withholding tips, so she came here to vent about compensation. She scans the rest of the list and marks environmental hazards too, remembering the unaddressed mold in the break room. She inputs some details and finds herself on a spectrum based on her workplace conditions, noticing how many of her coworkers are also unhappy about each issue, seeing what comparable workplaces are like that have better conditions and any organizing efforts that were made to achieve it, and see the history of that condition. By seeing herself on a spectrum and in a historical timeline, she can realize that her conditions aren't fixed. Change is possible. But change doesn't happen overnight, and most importantly, it doesn't happen alone. Organizing after your own mindset shift requires talking to coworkers through one-on-one conversations. These conversations can be challenging because coworkers are often siloed from one another and there's lack of personal rapport, and because one can be unsure what to say and how to talk about unions, especially when there's a real fear of retaliation and need for secrecy. Before this year, I thought that organizing required certain personality traits to overcome these barriers. being super outgoing, bold, confrontational. But in my research, organizers reflected on their own personality traits and that of organizers they look up to, and their qualities ran the gamut. Michelle Penson reflected back to me, everyone has it in them to be an organizer. Lots of things can be learned. The art of labor organizing conversations has been distilled into teachable techniques. There's already great work being done to spread these skills through virtual and in-person trainings by unions and labor orgs. During trainings, you're often paired into a breakout room to role-play organizing conversations. However, trainings are one-off. Carrying on momentum is a challenge. So I thought, how might we scale the power of these conversational trainings to be a regular practice, an opportunity to build solidarity with other organizers along the way? Introducing 1-800-ORGANIZE. Practice makes power. 1-800-ORGANIZE is a peer-to-peer hotline for budding organizers to practice the conversations they're preparing to have with coworkers. Through role play, they'll up their skills, build solidarity, lower anxiety, and increase their chances of success in forming a collective. Here's how it works. You text the hotline and answer a series of quick questions about the conversation you're preparing for. We'll pair you with another peer on the line who will role play as your coworker. For example, Layla, who we'll hear from in a moment, is beginning to organize at the museum where she works. She's gearing up for a conversation with a coworker in another's apartment, Max, who she hardly knows but wants to bring into the fold. Another organizer on the line will role play as Max and help her practice. Let's listen in. Hey Max, do you have a second to chat?
Not really. They've got me working late again tonight.
Gosh, that was me all last week. A couple of us are grabbing lunch tomorrow, actually, to talk about the staffing issues. Want to join?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure anything really changes.
Totally get that. But I figure if we're all frustrated alone, we might as well start comparing notes together.
What time?
Noon, in the park across the street. Just swing by if you're free.
Afterward, you receive a rubric to self-reflect on how it went. You can also find sample audio clips for inspiration on specific talking points, like what if my coworker asks about dues or retaliation, and hear best practices from seasoned organizers. Still, as prepared as you may be to talk to your coworkers, it can still be difficult. So I designed collective cards to help. Designed in the spirit of collectible trading cards to use as an aid during conversations with coworkers. Tear open a pack and find approachable information on your rights, common grievances, and the value of acting together. Organizers can customize decks to fit their workplace and choose to print themselves or order for distribution. Organizers say they can make information easier to remember on the spot, and in the wake of nerves, be a helpful prop to lean on. More, they're a helpful leave behind to share with coworkers. Okay, so I've talked about the mindset shift and the one-on-one conversations that are foundational to organizing. But as more people get involved, organizing becomes a group effort. Decisions need to be made together about what issue to campaign around, when to go public, what actions to take, and so on. But are we equipped with the skills to make group decisions? Before consensus building with a union, though, I wondered, how might we start practicing it in our everyday lives, with our teams, friends, and family? The vision for Consensus Builder is to help ease people into the skill of consensus building. You'll see the flows start in modes that help groups build the skills of consensus in everyday settings, from choosing a lunch spot with your work team to planning a trip with friends. Unlike basic polls or majority voting, it invites participants to reflect on their principles, rank proposals, and work toward decisions where everyone feels heard, without endless, unstructured back and forths that can stoke tension. With this skill in hand, when you face a union decision, you can feel more equipped. Zooming back out for a moment, I had a great time over the past 8 months learning this process. When you start out unorganized, there's something really alluring about realizing there's a process to organizing. But most people don't know what goes into organizing a union. If you don't know the steps, how the hell are you going to do it? Reading guides or attending trainings can often feel academic and like added work outside of work. So I set out to create an introduction to unions that's energizing. With Organizing Gym, an exercise class I designed with the support of fitness instructors who have done their own organizing in that industry. In the class, each activity embodies a stage of organizing. It's packaged as a curriculum that unions can partner with local gyms to offer at scale. Because of time, I can only show you 2 activities from the class, but let's have a look.
In this exercise, start with low intensity movement and work your way up to high knees. With a union, you may start with a petition and work your way up to a strike, when you're all out and have the most power. When you're cohesive and synchronized, you can succeed. You can even lift up a person with a few fingers. And your organizing can lead to a union and to wins at the negotiating table.
Exercise your power!
Each of these collective power tools are designed to be used at scale because this work is increasingly urgent. There are so many people to thank. Thank you to my research community, to my advisor, Julia. And speaking of timeliness, I want to particularly thank my faculty. Over the course of my time at SVA, some faculty have been organizing. A couple months ago, I put up a poster in our elevators thanking faculty for role modeling what it means to believe in their worth and to build creative community. Within 2 hours, those posters got torn down. So I'll go ahead and make it bigger on the screen at SVA Theater. This, by the way, is an organizing tip. When people try to stop organizing or companies union bust, highlight it to show how ridiculous that is. I'll close with one of my favorite quotes. The worker must have bread, but she must have roses too. Thank you to my faculty. Thank you to everyone being here and for your support. If anything, I hope the takeaway is that there's enough bread and roses to go around. Knowing that is the first step, and then there's more steps to follow. It's time to get organized. Thank you.
So many great projects. I love the continuum, the very beginning and at the end. So you worked with like a lot of organizers. I wrote down meatpacking, retail, hospitality, nonprofits, different kinds of workplaces. So what was that like?
Yeah, it was really an honor. Speaking of different communities, the technicians at this theater actually formed a union in 2023. They're currently in the process of negotiating a contract. So shout out to SVA Theater Tech Union.
Oh, well, now all the camera people are doing close-ups of you, focusing, you know. Um, yeah, I just so thoughtful from beginning to end. I can imagine this may be your next work.
I would love to stay involved in workers' rights. There's great organizations out there like the Workers Lab doing innovation in this space as well. Other designers like Martha Grant, who's focused on the contract stage of that process that we looked at. So there's a lot of potential along that continuum, like you said.
It's great. And we have candy roses for everybody because roses come in a dozen. So something there. Thanks.